Good day, everyone. I'm Ethan, moderator for this webinar. Welcome everyone for today's webinar, HIPAA texting and email using appropriate patient and professional communications. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to today's session looking at issues pertaining to communications, looking at, looking at HIPAA, texting, and email. Texting and email are important ways of communicating these days for healthcare purposes. So we'll look and see what are some of the issues involved with HIPAA and texting and email and what is appropriate for various kinds of patient and professional communications. So our agenda today is we're going to be looking at how to handle patient communications in general, and in particular how email and texting can work under HIPAA. And it's important to understand how the rules apply to these communications and what some of the parameters are. We'll look at some of the guidance that there is from Health and Human Services for patient communications, what's some of the things that they've said about how to handle these issues, and identify some of the HIPAA policies that may need to be changed depending on what do you have in place in your organization. A lot of organizations are getting into trouble for not handling communications properly. So it's important to make sure that you do those things appropriately to stay out of trouble. And particularly in the area of the rights for electronic copies of electronic records and just the rights for people to be able to get copies of their records is an important issue with Health and Human Services, so we can expect that's going to remain being so for the future. So we'll see what kind of reasons guidance there is in court decisions about providing access to health information and the allowable fees that are involved. I'll also be taking a brief look at what might be changing in the proposed changes to the privacy rule, which may actually finally be finalized at some point. We keep hearing rumors about this, so when it comes to new regulations, I'll believe it when I see it, and there's no point in sweating yourself too much about regulations before they get finalized, because they can change significantly between what's proposed and what's finalized. So we'll see what you might expect, and also touching on this area has to do with if communications go wrong, you may wind up with a situation that may be a reportable breach. And let's be aware of the fact that we need to look at what is the process that might be used in the event of a breach. And so we'll be prepared for enforcement and auditing. Is really if you do a good job to understand what the rules are. When you understand how to handle breaches and how to handle things in the first place to avoid the breaches, that can help you answer questions properly if there's some kind of enforcement action or an audit action that takes place that you get involved with. You need to have the proper documentation in hand to be able to show you've been doing the right thing in case there are any questions. That's really what compliance is all about, is making sure that you have the documentation in hand for being able to respond to any questions that come along. Okay. Now, just a little bit of background, just by way of how I've gotten into this HIPAA business over the years. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I'm just providing some information and resources about how to look at the regulations and how organizations can take steps to be in compliance with the regulations, and what are some of the things that they need to consider. What we're talking about today is the world of the privacy and security rules and breach notification rules, and how that fits in with the worlds of communication these days that we all have to deal with for dealing with our various patients and clients. Okay, so now we have the privacy rule. So we have also breach notification rule has been around since February of 2010. It's been enforceable. It requires the breaches be reported to HHS and the individuals who were affected. It, of course, can be very expensive to deal with. In healthcare, the patients want to use this stuff for, managing their appointments, for making or changing appointments, or keeping their appointment calendar, their own appointment calendar. Texting is very useful these days. It's great for short messages, great for, for fast kinds of things like schedule changes, running late, quick communication of results or comments. It's just something else to make us nervous, I guess. So what are the HIPAA considerations? Now, here's the thing you got to consider about, okay? So what are you allowed to do? Do what the patient wants, or their personal representative. If they're, somebody who has somebody else acting on their behalf under HIPAA. So when it comes to email, texting, and security, email and texting are inherently insecure. Plain email and plain texting. Now, a lot of people prefer email to the telephone. People, when it comes to a telephone call, first of all, as to what are some of the risks that are involved and what must not be sent by plain email or text message. Some of the problems. Now, there are some secure texting solutions out there. So can you text appointment reminders? Yes, certainly if you have a consent or TCPA. And when it comes to email, also touching on the world of marketing, when it comes to text and email-based marketing to patients, again, we're talking about what HIPAA talks about with marketing, that's medical records or billing records maintained by the provider and get copies for a reasonable cost-based fees. Your copies can't be any more than what it costs to provide them. That's why, logging in through a portal. So when it comes to looking at the risks in electronic protected health information, each risk issue has an impact and likelihood. So back in January of 2020, HHS said, well, we're going to change how we deal with the enforcement of individual access. So the 2016 guidance for access is really where a lot of this important stuff is for how to handle these situations. Now, so when it comes to timeliness, form, and format, the idea is as far as liability. So you need to have a policy on insecure communications with patients is an important thing to have. Also you want to have a portable technology policy. If people are using things like texting and email, obviously they're going to be using some portable technology. Any acquisition, access, use, or disclosure in violation of the privacy rule is a breach with clear indications of what to do. So your to-do list is don't be denial, accommodate the individual rights to the best of your abilities, make sure your policies and procedures meet the requirements of the rules. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening today. It's been my pleasure to talk with you about HIPAA compliance and communications. It is a area of current interest, that's for sure. And so do your best to consider patients' requests and do your best to do things in a secure way, and that will put you in a good position to avoid problems with compliance and keep your patients happy. So again, thanks for listening, and please enjoy the remainder of your day.
Thank you, Jim. That does conclude the session for today. Thank you, everyone, for participating.